Welcome to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. Hi everyone, I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money gamer extraordinaire. Today we're talking about the investment strategies to reduce taxes with national financial columnist Ken Davis, CLU, CHFC, CFP, and CPA. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Hey, Stephen.
Wow, those are a lot of letters. Give us a little understanding for our consumers, all these four credentials that you have.
Well, I think they know what a CPA is.
Yes, I do.
Certified Public Accountant. A CHFC is a Chartered Financial Consultant. CLU is a Chartered Life Underwriter. And, of course, CFP is a Chartered Financial Planner.
Certified Financial Planner, Yep.
No, I said chartered. It is certified, yes.
When we're talking about investment strategies, I know that we had a lot of consumer traffic and mail for people who had non-qualified funds, ETFs, so forth. They received a statement, and most of them should have been positive. Last year was a great year, but some had negative funds, which tells me that maybe you need to change funds. But when they received their statement, it showed a loss. About a week and a half later, the same fund jettisoned a 1099 and sent it to the client. I'm going, the clients still go, wait a minute, if I had a loss, why do I get a 1099 for a taxable event? What's going on?
Well, what's going on, there's actually two levels of taxation. There's the taxation of the mutual fund itself, and there's the taxation of when you buy and sell shares. So if you buy shares towards the end of the year that had a lot of deferred gains, they hadn't turned their portfolio, they held their positions, and then they were forced to start selling off shares because the market's plummeting and they have to cash out to pay people leaving the funds. They're forced to sell these deferred positions. That creates a capital gain that has to be distributed as a 1099.
So throughout the year, they may be buying and selling within that fund, and even if the fund overall has a loss, there are short gains or some kind of taxable event that's occurring.
Well, let's say that they bought IBM stock at $10 a share. They've held it for 10 years. They haven't changed their position. Now it's $50 a share. And now the market plummets and they're forced to sell off their portfolio to redeem the shares. They sell those $50 IBM stock with $10 tax basis. They get a $40 gain. Now, you weren't around when that was happening, but that's just how the tax law works, is when that's distributed, they have to, or sold, they have to recognize that gain and pay it out to you as a 1099, even though you're in a loss position. I know it sounds ridiculous. That's the law.
Wow, it's confusing to consumers, and they always ask us over I've been in this thing 30 years, and for about 25 of those 30 years, I've been getting email from people saying, why am I paying taxes on a loser fund?
Right.
Let's talk about the second thing. People are just now becoming aware of adjusted gross income. I'm a consumer. I'm doing my own TurboTax. I'm going to my H&R Block advisor. They're walking me through. Consumers are more educated now with everything that's going on the internet. But now, just about the time we thought we had it made, they introduced this new concept from a consumer point of view called modified adjusted gross income. Ken, what's that?
Well, MAGI, modified adjusted gross income, has actually been around for quite some time. The most important one is the determination of whether your Social Security is taxable or not. That started back in 1980. And what it is the government says, we're going to give you some tax relief, deductions, credits, exemptions, but not too much, okay? If you are one of these quote-unquote rich people, and quite frankly, they're not so rich, especially with the taxation of Social Security, if you hit certain thresholds of this modified adjusted gross income, we're going to force you to include Social Security income. We're going to reduce your deductions, your exemptions, your credits. They do all these adjustments. They nickel and dime you, a little piece here, a little bit piece there, so that when you finally do your final calculation, so, oh my gosh, I thought I was in a 25% bracket, but I'm really in an effective 42% bracket. It's the government's way of, first they give you bennies and then they surreptitiously just kind of pull it back from you a little bit here, a little bit there, and they use the concept modified adjusted gross income to do those things.
Now, when I have money left over and I want to put that in some kind of a retirement fund, there's a lot of debate today based on tax brackets. If I'm in the middle class and I look at my marginal tax bracket, should I be using a regular deductible IRA, Ken, or should I be using a non-deductible Roth IRA?
Generally, if you're astute enough to be looking 10, 20, 30 years down the line as to when you're actually taking the money out, generally I would prefer the Roth. And in the past, we said, well, if the tax rates are exactly the same in the beginning and the end, it really doesn't make a difference which one, and it feels better to get the deduction right now. But the fact of the matter is that it's not just the standard tax bracket you have to worry about. It's all these nickel and dime little pieces, these modified adjusted gross income, in particular, the inclusion of Social Security and taxation, that is actually effectively going to raise your rate. And in that evaluation, a higher tax cost at the end points to a Roth IRA as the solution.
So that sometimes that's really the better deal.
Frequently.
Wow. Even though I would have gotten a deduction with a conventional IRA.
Right. And we don't know what the future holds. Tax rates could plummet. We could have, one of those events where things go down, but it's highly unlikely. I think most of us expect tax rates to go up, and in that environment, that's better. For those that have more money, don't really want to tap their IRA, you're not forced to make distributions at 70.5 either, like you are with the regular IRA. So, and then you can pass it to the kids. So, there's situations for estate planning purposes where you want to hang on to the money, use other assets, or if tax rates are higher, and effectively they are with this MAGI type stuff, then a Roth generally is going to work better.
Well, modified adjusted gross income is a new term that I'm sorry to say we're going to have to learn as consumers. We'll be right back right after this.
Take a close look at your hard-earned dollar. How do you think your money's doing? Are you keeping an eye on it? Is it protected from taxes, inflation, and market risk? Over time, those Washingtons could become Franklins. With tax-advantaged indexed universal life from one of the largest distributors of indexed universal life, Ash Brokerage.
Well, welcome back to our second segment. I'm amazed, Ken, at how many consumers are now getting into dollar cost averaging into funds. I mean, we've really become a knowledgeable and an informed society. We're doing this, and we're doing dollar cost averaging, sometimes a little bit lump sum from maybe a tax return. We'd invest that. We're putting money into certain mutual funds, but I've noticed that some people are saying they're looking also at ETFs because there's some tax advantages around ETFs that I don't have with mutual funds. Talk a little bit about that.
An ETF is an exchange traded fund. And what's important about them is they tend to be set up as index funds, S&P 500, the Dow, a wide variety of choices. And the idea is that I will set up my asset allocation modeling of large cap, medium cap, small cap, international, domestic, and I'll just buy exchange traded funds to fit each of those slices of the pie and just hang on to it. Well, that gets rid of that problem we started the show with, which is a mutual fund that's forced to distribute. If they're not turning that portfolio, there's not going to be a lot of gain. So year to year, it can be good planning so that you can control your taxes. So ETFs and asset allocation modeling, a static type design, is not only low cost, but it's also frequently a better tax planning.
Well, even though we're in April, I want to bring this up just because it's something that we can be proactive, because we're all thinking about taxes right now. I want to talk about when we get closer to right around Thanksgiving, we need to start thinking in our head as a consumer, right? Because I don't know if anybody's going to proactively tell us this. We need to think about, how do I harvest taxable gains and taxable losses? Is it ordinary income or is it capital gain treatment? Walk us through that basically from a consumer point of view.
Well, what you can do, and now we're talking about somebody who isn't using money managers. They're not using mutual funds or ETFs or anything else. They're actually buying individual stocks and bonds. So they're managing their own personal portfolio. They can go through and say, gee, these stocks have done really well and I've got great gains, but I think they're getting overpriced and I'd really like to sell them, but I don't want to pay taxes. And over here, I've got some losers that I'm afraid they're going to go down worse and they're just not looking good, and I'd really like to get out of those as well. Well, those create the losses that can be offset against the gains.
Now, I noticed in I was watching one of our programs that we recorded, you have to match up these kind of like-to-like taxation ideas. Talk a little bit about that from a consumer point of view.
Okay. When you look at the capital gain situation, the real benefit is long-term capital gains, assets that are capital assets held for more than a year. Okay, we get a preferred tax rate of for the highest rate is 20%. Most people are going to be in a 15, maybe a 10%. So the long-term capital gain is our friend. And ordinary loss from short-term capital losses, or even we're only going to be able to deduct up to $3,000 a year against ordinary income, salary, wages, stuff like that. So we generally want to utilize our losses against gains. We want to do some of this harvesting. We're limited on the deductibility of those losses. So the one thing we can deduct them against is cap gain. Okay, so we do that first, and then you have to match short to short loss and gain, long to long loss and gain, and then net all those out. The Schedule D on the tax return, the instructions goes through all of that with you.
I noticed that certain accounting software, which a lot of the public is using, like TurboTax now, they will help you go through this.
Right.
And there's a lot of harvesting to be done so that you can match your non-qualified, that's monies that are not in your retirement qualified plan, like a 401k or a defined benefit plan if you have such a plan. And this will help you understand and walk through it. I mean, it's very good. The TurboTax is just one of the many good software programs. It'll help you walk through this area where you can say, hey, I can really do something about this. Now, Ken, when we're talking about this, there's also products that already have a disposition under the law. They have tax deferral. They could even be tax-free if it's set up right. Talk a little bit about the power of annuities, because out on the web, there's a lot of negative and positive. There's kind of a war out there about annuities. But talk about the power of deferral and why it works on your 1040.
Well, the beauty of deferral, obviously, is that the earnings inside of a variable annuity or a regular annuity is tax deferred, never hits your tax return. There is not a 1099 at the end of the year to hand to your tax advisor. You just don't currently pay tax on it. Now, ultimately, if you make distributions, you pay tax on it. And if it's a partial withdrawal, only part of the contract, that likely is going to be fully taxable. However, you have planning alternatives. You can accumulate tax deferred, but then you can actually annuitize your contract, meaning that cash that you have in there can be converted to a payout over 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, or even for a lifetime, as long as you live. When you do that, you get a better tax situation in that they let you amortize your tax basis over your life expectancy. So what does that mean in English? I put 100 grand into it. I'm a 75-year-old person with 10 years left. I get, with a 10-year life expectancy, I take my 100 divided by 10. That's a return of principal of $10,000. So if I made $11,000 in distributions, I get to subtract 10. I pay tax on 1,000. So there are ways with these products, your annuitized annuities or your deferred annuities, where you can kind of control your taxation.
Well, these are all ideas that you can do as a consumer to think about taxes. We're talking about it because this is April, the time for taxes. But this is a good point to think about proactively starting to consider end of the year proactive action that you can take to mitigate your tax bill. That's our show for today. I want to thank Ken Davis for being my special guest and today's money mentor. And before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always consult your tax advisor or legal counsel. And as the good Reverend John Wesley once said, make all you can, save all you can, give all you can. I'm Steve Savant. See you next week.